All right. All right. Hey, aloha, Love Tribe. Welcome. It's Saturday night. I know you guys don't typically hear from me on a Saturday night, but you all are tonight because I have somebody with me here who I had the pleasure of being on stage with at Pacific Bitcoin a couple years ago. And somehow the universe dressed us up the same. And we were talking about art and culture and how Bitcoin is making the world a better place and how art, music, and culture are making the world a better place. So this is Dustin Trammell. He is an investor, an inventor, a gamer, somebody who I've been watching for a long, long time. And we're going to be talking about how Bitcoin is fun and his new Bitcoin collectible card game. Welcome, Dustin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Totally, dude. So, okay, you are somebody who loves the color green. Let's talk about that after. Let's talk about why green is so important to you. And but I want my audience to understand, like, because a lot of people look at charts and they get scared, and we look at cryptography and we're like, oh my gosh, and finance and money and stuff. And you and I are obviously creatives and artists. Like, how the heck did you get from being, uh, a cosplay inventor to a VC, and now you're starting these companies? Like, can you let everybody know who you are and how you got here?
Sure. So yeah, as you mentioned, I am a creative, but I'm also a technologist. I
Mhm.
have a wide range of interests and hobbies and skills that I've developed over the years. Not just in art and gaming and things, but my background is in information security. I was working in that industry when the white paper was originally published, out of the cryptography email list. So I was paying attention to that just in the normal course of my career. I've always been kind of libertarian minded, interested in alternative currencies and economic models and things like that. I was interested in Liberty Dollar around the same time as a silver backed physical alternative currency. And the white paper was published, and I read it. I was like, oh, this is great. This is alternative currency mixed up with cryptography. I'm obviously very interested in information security and cryptography. So read the white paper, found it fascinating, waited pretty diligently for the software to come out, which did a few months later, in early January 2009.
Wow. Okay. So hold on. Just hold on. So everybody understands. You read the white paper before January of 2000.
I read the white paper either Halloween night, the day it was
Like,
released, or the next morning. I don't recall exactly when, but it was released on Halloween, October 31st. And I read it somewhere within the next 24 hours or so, just checking the cryptography mailing list.
how did you get, like, just, I mean, because, like, obviously you're an OG legend, right? And so it's like, how do you, how did you find yourself in that, mailing, the Bitcoin cryptography mailing list, like, how did that happen?
So a lot of people conflate the cypherpunks mailing
Thank
list
you. Yeah.
and the cryptography mailing list. They're
Okay.
two different things. I was not on the cypherpunks list. I was on the cryptography list, which is more like industry cryptographers, people just working in cryptography
Okay.
at the time, and being working in information security. I was very interested in cryptography, so I joined the industry mailing list and followed that list. So
So how
Satoshi
did you get that?
chose to
How did you
publish
even get to
there.
that list? Like, I guess for those of us who don't know, and I'm like a total, newbie to all this stuff, like back then in 2008, 2009, like, how did you even find that list?
I don't remember exactly how I found it. I probably heard about it from another information security person, just working in the industry. They may have tipped me off to it. I don't remember. It's a public list. You could just go find it on the website. Probably if you searched for cryptography mailing list,
Okay.
you would have found it pretty easily.
Okay.
And anybody could sign up. It was an open public list, so not too difficult to find or get into, honestly.
Wow. Okay. And so, like, when you started, when you obviously got exposed to the white paper, like, in everything you've seen up until that point, like, did something all of a sudden just like, this is it? Like, did you get an aha moment, or how did that work for you as a
Not really at
technologist and a
the time.
security person?
Yeah, I was looking at it from a very technical mindset. Looking, I obviously had a little bit of interest from the libertarian mindset and Austrian economics. I saw some of that in there, but I was more looking at it as, okay, what are they using the cryptography for? How does it function? What is this blockchain ledger that they're using? How does that work? So I was looking at it from a very analytical mindset rather than a philosophical or economic mindset. And most of the conversation around it at the time, it came out on the mailing list, was maybe a dozen or so cryptographers just arguing about whether it was a viable idea or not, and
Uh-huh.
whether it was going to work. There wasn't a Bitcoin community to say
Right.
around it or anything. It was brand new. All of the people discussing it, this was their first exposure to it within a couple of weeks of it, the white paper being published. So yeah, it was an interesting time to kind of be looking at it. I didn't really have the aha moment until much later, when I kind of went down the what is money rabbit hole a bit
Okay.
more. I had always kind of inherently understood commodity money, gold, silver, those types of scarce assets. But I didn't really understand why they were money, what made a good money. And once I went down the what is money rabbit hole, thanks in large part to Robert Breedlove and that podcast, I then understood, okay, this is why gold has been money for the last 5,000 years or so. Um,
Mhm.
and then it dawned on me why Bitcoin is superior money.
And I think, for a lot of people listening, who and I, I used to work at Deloitte and Touche. I've started, a couple different companies with, my ex-husband, who, is a wonderful money person, but like I never even understood what was money, And so until and I went to school for, business and accounting and finance and all this, but they didn't actually teach you what money was. And I feel like that's such a uh-oh, where'd you go, Dustin? Um we lost you, brother. All right, you're going to come back, I'm sure. So what we understand, like what is money, they didn't teach you that in school, and they didn't teach us what the Federal Reserve is. They didn't teach us what was sound money. They didn't teach us what was, um, what was a proper ledger. Okay, yo.
We had a little bit of a connection problem there. It
No
looked
worries, my friend. I know you're in the tropics. God bless you.
like, I've,
I'm in the
I've got
cold.
500 gigabit fiber here, though, so like I shouldn't be having any connection
You're
problems.
like, "Wait a minute." But yeah, I was just kind of carrying on with just like the what is money, right? Like a lot of us go through, um, you know, whether it's school, whether it's business, whatever, it's like we go through and we're like, "Cool, what's profit and loss? What's an income statement? What's your balance sheet?"
Mhm.
Nobody teaches you what money is.
They don't teach you what money is because
No,
they
they
don't want you
don't.
to realize that
No.
fiat is not money.
Yeah. And it's such a, it's such a rug pull, when you to me mentally, because it's just like, wait a minute, you mean this thing that is nothing? It's
Yeah,
literally monopoly money, and I'm supposed to trust these dudes or guys or girls or whoever say, just
literally
yeah,
made up out of thin air.
literally. And I was just listening to Walker's podcast today with Julian and Peruvian Bull, when they did the their thing with the Jekyll Island thing in the Fed, and you're just like, what? So I feel like for a lot of us, who are, I think seasoned professionals and entrepreneurs, it's such a strange experience to feel like, what do you mean I didn't know what money was? And what do you mean there's this system that is extracting value from us as we, sleep, and we don't have a say so in it. And it's such a strange experience. And you've obviously, had this awareness for quite a while, and I'm still, it's almost 3-4 years. I don't know. I can't count since COVID, like 21. And so I guess 4 years, I'm still new to Bitcoin. How did you get from, where you were starting to learn about this to turning into like, were you always like a gamer? Were you always somebody who's like this creative person? Because obviously you've got, Trammell Ventures, and you've got the games and the fun stuff that you do? Like, how do you balance those two things in your life?
I do my best. I do a lot of things, so trying to keep them balanced is definitely a challenge sometimes. I've always been a gamer from the very early childhood. My dad had Atari computers when I was
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 years old. Somewhere around 7 or 8, I started copying video games out of magazines and typing them into the computer in order to get new games and play them, which also kind of kickstarted my uh, technologist career as well. I got my first modem at 10 or 11 years old.
Oh
This
my
was kind
god.
of pre-public internet.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I was dialing up bulletin board systems, and I found some hacker BBSs that seemed interesting, and they had hacker tools on them. And some of them were not very secure, and you could actually hack the BBS that was giving you the hacker tools to do so.
Wow.
And that kind of got me fascinated with information security. And so from a very early age, kind of was looking at technology and information security as well as games and things, because computers back then were that's most of what you could do with them. There was some business software and there were games,
Yeah.
and then as we started getting communications technology and networks, you started paying a lot more attention to the security of the computer, because suddenly it was connected to other things and people could potentially attack you through those vectors. So yeah, I've played lots of games growing up. When I was a kid, I like to create my own games. Obviously, I still do.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of been going with that as a hobby for most of my life. And then, maybe 7, 8 years ago, I decided to try to monetize some of it and actually publish some games and create games for conferences like the Bitcoin conference and Pacific Bitcoin. I also create like in-person immersive games where driven by an app, you're running around the conference solving puzzles and doing things like that. So yeah, that essentially became the Rogue Signal company, which is also the publisher of this Bitcoin collectible card game.
Well, let's talk about that, because we've got, obviously we'll pull the video up and kind of show this to
Yeah,
everybody. But
yeah, we can start with the video.
totally. And I do you know who Yukai Cho is?
It sounds familiar, but I don't think so.
So he created this framework called the Octalysis Prime framework. He's one of my
Okay.
teachers, and so he's a behavioral scientist, and he talks about like how to, um, ethically motivate people to,
That's where I've heard the name. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I do know the name. I haven't done a lot of digging into that though.
And so for those of us who are interested in learning, right, there's all these different learning personalities and learning styles.
Mhm.
And, there's fun for the sake of fun. And there's also like, well, how can we use fun as a tool for learning something, and you think about the ABC song, right? Like
Mhm.
everybody knows the ABC song because it's a jingle and we get it and it's fun. And, so they talk about, when you're having fun and your emotions are elevated and you're doing some kind of repetitive thing, you're going to have a lot more of a retention capacity versus just, okay, here's a chart. I saw a graph and here's a presentation and I'm going to regurgitate it and I'm going to go to sleep and I'm never going to remember
Forget
it
it
and fuck
forever.
off, And so to me, like, the gaming, is very, very important to, and to have fun, of course, but
Mhm.
there's also fun ways, to how help, small people, children and adults
Mhm.
learn. And so I wanted, let's have some fun. So I'm going to pull this up and we'll watch this little video and then we can talk about like your,
Sure.
all the backstory of this game and how you came up with it and whatnot.
Yeah,
So
and I definitely tried to pack as much Bitcoin concepts into this game to help teach people that might be completely unfamiliar with Bitcoin about a lot of the different concepts and things that Bitcoin employs.
Yeah, and I think it's so important because, depending on your audience, right? Like, even if you're dealing with like a 60-year-old hedge fund dude from Wall Street, like
Mhm.
he's still going to have resistance, or she, is going to be like, this is, so it's so important for those of us who are different styles of learners to have different ways um to come to the elephant, as it were. Like, you talk, the elephant with the tail and the horn, the trunk and everything, and all the
Mhm.
three blind men think it's three different things. It's like, no, it's
Right.
one whole elephant. And so I think it's really important that we have, folks like you, making these things and helping people learn, and of course have lots of fun. So let me hit over here and get to the play button. Can you hear it okay? Yeah.
Welcome to the Bitcoin collectible card game. Bitcoin CCG is a collectible trading card game for 2 or more players, where you harness resources and be the first to collect 21 Bitcoin to win. Build your deck, collect cards through starter decks and booster packs. Construct a deck from your own cards to pit against others in a race to earn, win, or steal the most Bitcoin. Battle other players. Each player must play with their own constructed deck against other players and their
Oh no. Don't stop.
Buffering.
We're
decks.
up. Oh, there we go.
Gameplay consists of rounds where
Oh gosh, don't stop there, little buffer.
each player takes a turn, and then the round ends by mining a new block. Harness your resources, energy, hardware, software, services, meet iconic characters, person, avoid pitfalls and make the most of opportunities in the battle, mempool actions, instant actions, mine the block. Mine your own Bitcoin by generating the most hash each turn.
So much buffering. Okay. So,
Grow your
We
collection
didn't like before.
with 147 unique cards in the core. 2025 set ranging in
all right, we're going to stop just so that I
Uh,
don't annoy the listeners.
that's
But
fine. There's not much left there anyway.
cool. Okay. But so let's talk about this, because I think this is such an interesting, it's an interesting concept. And I was never somebody who grew up with, uh, uh, you know, um, Dungeons and Dragons and Pokemon and stuff. Like, as a girl, that wasn't my jam, right? And so, can you help everybody kind of understand this? Because I think it's something very familiar with a lot of folks,
Sure.
and how this game can work and be familiar with, something that they're used to playing.
Right. Yeah. If you're familiar with collectible card games, like you mentioned, Pokemon, Magic the Gathering,
Yeah.
Disney Lorcana, all of these types of games, this is going to feel very familiar to you. If you're not familiar with those types of games, essentially what they are games where you construct a deck out of your collection of cards. It is a collectible, so you're buying booster packs and decks and things to amass a collection of cards. And then out of all of your cards, you might find some that work together as a nice strategy, or some that complement each other. And so you build a deck around those mechanics or those concepts. And then you play your deck against somebody else in their deck, or multiple other people in their decks. And you're generally battling. You've got creatures that do damage to each other, or you've got spells that affect the rules of the game, or different effects on the creatures or on the other players and things like that. So that's, in a nutshell, how collectible card games work. I got into Magic the Gathering very early. Magic is, I don't know how old it is now, but I believe I started playing Magic in 1994 or 3, somewhere around
Whoa,
there.
dude.
And it was already 2 years old at that point. I missed the very beginning of it, and got in started playing it a couple of years after it came out. But Richard Garfield is an amazing game designer. He invented Magic the Gathering, and it literally created the genre of collectible card games. Nothing like this existed prior to Magic the Gathering. So, at least not that I'm aware of. And it spawned all kinds of copycat games. Now we have Pokemon, we have Marvel, we've got Star Wars, we've got Star Trek. All of these different fictional worlds and environments have collectible card games. And being a huge proponent of Bitcoin, I was like, why doesn't Bitcoin have a collectible card game?
Wow.
So let's make one.
I think it's like, this is something where a lot of people, I think, get lost with, like, oh, I need a Bitcoin job, or how do I, work in Bitcoin? It's like, what do you love?
Yeah.
What the heck do you love? Are you a DJ? Are you a musician? Are you a poet? Are you a game designer? Are you, a holistic healer? Are you a carnivore? Whatever, like, are you a holistic retreat person? It doesn't matter. Like, there's always somewhere for those of us who want to integrate Bitcoin into what we already love. And I think a lot of people out there are just like, oh, I'm supposed to just go work for some company. And it's like, no, like, take what you're passionate about and let's play. Let's be, as a DJ, obviously, I'm like, how do we remix things? How do we remix this to that? And how do we put chocolate and peanut butter together? And so I think it's so cool that you've done this. And what's been how many folks have been able to experience this yet? Like, what's been the response with your audience?
So I've been working on this game for about 4 years.
Oh my gosh, dude.
A year and a quarter, year and a half, something like that, just kind of working out the game mechanics, designing it, and just figuring out generally how the game works. At that point, we started prototyping cards and started playtesting, which of course found all kinds of problems with the game. You have to refine it. It's a very iterative process coming up with a game, because once you start playtesting, you're constantly finding things that work great and not so great. And you have to iterate, change things. We've gone through probably 4 or 5 versions of the core set of cards. Almost every card that we started with has changed a little bit in some way over that year and a half to 2 years or so of playtesting. But all of the people that I've had playtest it, granted they're, Bitcoin and crypto people, they've loved it. They've enjoyed it. I have a few playtesters that are not from the Bitcoin and crypto space, and they've also enjoyed it as well. So the reception from the playtesters has been great. I think we've pretty much got all of the kinks ironed out, and we are hopefully going to print here in the next week or 2.
Yay.
At which point we'll shut down the crowdfunding campaign. And then once we get all of the inventory back, we'll put that up for after filling the pre-orders. That'll be up on the Rogue Signal website, web shop, for people to purchase directly.
And do you feel like this is something that is a STEM or a STEAM opportunity for, like, an after school program, or for homeschoolers or people who are doing private school, because
yeah, possibly. It teaches more abstract concepts than direct knowledge about Bitcoin. For example, in the game, there's a mempool, and you play certain cards into the mempool, and they have to sit there and wait until you mine a block at the end of the round. And then whoever has the most hash is the one that mines the block, and they get to choose which of these things are going to go into the block and have happen. So while you'll definitely come to understand the concept of a mempool and how that works, it obviously doesn't teach you the nitty-gritty technicals of how the Bitcoin mempool functions. But from a high-level abstract concept, you'll absolutely understand a mempool after playing this game a couple of times.
That's super cool. Do you know who Nifty Nye is?
Yes.
Yeah, like, she's got her kind of physical game with the strings and everything. So, do you know about her box, like her learning box?
No, I don't actually.
Oh my gosh, she's so you guys need to
I have a call with her on Monday or Wednesday, actually.
Yes. Okay. Good.
I will ask her about this box.
Ask her about the learning box, and
Okay.
so it's just such a cool thing, because she can go send all these different boxes all over. And I got to visit her when I was in Austin, and I know, obviously that's where one of your places are, and I was like, I'm just not a technical person. I mean, I'm technical to some degree, obviously, but I'm not like a coder. I'm not a cryptographer for sure. And she's just like, yeah, I wanted to make something so that people could kind of visually and tactily touch, like, what it looks like to put a block in, and so I was just like, cool. So I just think it's fun to like see what you're doing and what she's doing, and all the folks out there who are, having fun and making these different ways for people to like not just have fun, but like learn a little bit on the way too, and
Yeah,
so
she was here in Puerto Rico about a month ago, and we synced up and talked a little bit about gaming and the Bitcoin plus conferences and stuff. So yeah, we've got a call on Wednesday, and we'll hopefully be collaborating on some stuff.
good. I hope so. Yeah, and I know she's got her thing coming up in Brazil, and she's amazing. So I was so like, I'm just like, I don't know about you. I mean, I'm just like this normal person. And the fact that I get to talk to you and meet her and talk to all these devs and talk to all these people who are like the ones who are, making Bitcoin possible.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we think of, this like cloistered area of, oh, here's all these, people with the Fed and the government and the money and the banks, and you don't ever get to be a part of that. But like Bitcoin is this inclusive for everybody on the whole planet network, and it's like
Bitcoiners are very open and inviting until you're shitcoining, and then they're toxic. But
precisely, I'm ultra toxic. I know.
other
It's
than
like
that,
all of a
they're very
sudden, like,
open and inviting.
I know it's like like the squid ink starts going out,
Yeah,
like for me, like I've had some squid ink going out this week.
Yeah.
But it's such an interesting environment, because you can talk to everybody and just be like, hey, I'm trying to do this project and I think it would be cool. And I want to zap people here with my personal growth project. And I want to build it on Nostr, or I want to do this. And it's like, fuck yeah, let's go. And so it's just such a cool, like, I don't know. I've never felt this. And, I'm retired, from being a DJ professionally. Obviously I'll go play at some, our Bitcoin conferences for our friends
Right.
and family, but I'm not on the road 245 days a year, which is what you need to be on if you're going to be, a real professional DJ. But,
Right.
that environment is still very cutthroat. It's very like, I always say elbows out, right? You're just kind of like, get out of my way. No, 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 no. I need to push you out of the way so I can get up
You got
here.
to look out for yourself.
Yeah. And like, I feel like our global Bitcoin community is just like, no,
Much more
no.
uplifting.
Yeah, come on in. Yeah.
Much more inviting, much more uplifting. Yeah.
Yeah. And
The
just
camaraderie is real.
totally. Well, cause it's like, we understand like the game theory. It's like, if everybody wins, everybody wins. It's
Yep.
true, and to me, from a spiritual perspective, if everybody wins, everybody wins. And so whatever your spiritual beliefs are, it doesn't matter. It's just like, that's the truth, and I think that's something that we don't see in a lot of other industries or sectors in the world, and it just, and this is in action. It's not just theoretical,
Right.
it's not just philosophical.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like a positive feedback loop. And unless it's being undermined by, massive theft through fiat money, it is a positive feedback loop. And humans do lift each other up when they're prosperous. So I fully believe that, Bitcoin is embodying that, and it is showing people that again, because we haven't had that since fiat money kind of ruined everything.
Total. How has this changed your life? I mean, obviously, you've been, since you read the white paper in 2008, like
Right.
before and after white paper, like how has your human experience changed with like looking at how the world is?
Yeah. I mean, I found Bitcoin. I played around with it initially. I mined some coins for a few months. Then I kind of stopped paying attention to it for a few years until the news of the Silk Road using it as its currency came out. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this Bitcoin thing. Let me go look at that again. Yeah, just kind of getting into Bitcoin and then truly understanding money really opened my eyes as to the scam that is fiat currency, and the governments all over the world perpetrating this on their citizens. It is massive, rampant theft.
Yeah.
And once I realized that, I was like, yeah, opt out, use Bitcoin. I use those hashtags constantly on social media because I truly do believe it. I'm all in Bitcoin. People say, "Hodl, don't spend." I was like, I have to spend. It's all I got. I do have some fiat revenue streams coming in, but it mostly goes into Bitcoin once I receive it. And once you do that, you realize that you can save again, and humans don't have to also have a second full-time job as an investor just to maintain their wealth.
Yep.
You really can just save in Bitcoin and focus on your craft, as the meme says. And so that's what I've been doing. I save in Bitcoin. I do obviously invest as well, but the hurdle rate for an investment is, does it outperform just saving in Bitcoin? And when you look at the performance of Bitcoin versus the dollar, 8, 10, 15% inflation is your hurdle rate. If your investment is not going to return north of that, you're still losing value.
Yep.
And not very many investments return north of 15%. And when you find them, you probably have to be an accredited investor to even participate, which locks most people out of them. So, the normal pleb can't save, and they can't invest in things that are going to beat inflation. So what option do you have? You can save in hard money, and Bitcoin is the hardest money humans have ever invented. So, I truly believe the meme, save in Bitcoin and focus on your craft, which is what I'm doing. I'm focusing on the things that I love to do.
And so for people who are obviously, not at a place where, they've got a huge sack of sats, right? And so they're still in, fiat land, and they're, doing whatever their craft is, whether it's, being a plumber, whether it's being a teacher, whether it's, being an investor, whatever. How do we help people start to make that transition? Because it is a little intimidating, and I know for me, like the people who are in, it's hard. And for the folks that are in my life who I'm still, I've gotten to the point where I'm just like, I'm just going to be honey. And when they're ready for something sweet, they can come to me instead of trying to go throw myself at them. It's just been like exhausting.
Yeah, there's a number of hurdles there. There's the mindset shift that has to happen. Most people alive today have lived under a fiat currency regime their entire lives. They don't know anything different.
Yeah.
A good majority of them are living paycheck to paycheck. And when you live paycheck to paycheck, you don't have any savings. You can't buy Bitcoin and save it because you literally have no money to put into savings.
Right.
So you have to kind of figure out, okay, can I, work a side hustle and put that into Bitcoin and then have my normal job pay my bills? Can I, come up with some way to earn Bitcoin, or maybe somebody gifts you some rather than immediately sell it? Try to hold on to it. But it's real hard for a large number of people living in today's world because they just simply don't have any money to save.
Yeah. And I think that's the first. So it's like we're dealing with a couple different things, right? We're dealing with the folks who are just literally, like, I always say, like right here, I'm like, you've got the water and you've got just enough to breathe right above the water, and you're barely, keeping afloat. And so there's those folks. And unfortunately, as we see, in my opinion, this is by design, right? Because the masses can't go revolt against you as an entity called the Kraken or the government or the deep state or whatever the fuck you want to call it, if they're just struggling to get
if you
by.
can't afford to lose a day or two of work, you don't have time to go protest.
No, you have no time to go protest. Yeah.
You got to put food on your table, and you're
Exactly.
paycheck to paycheck. There's
Exactly.
only one outcome there.
Yeah. And the food that you're putting on your table, unfortunately, is 99-cent pizza slices because, that's all you can afford for your family of three.
Yeah, fiat food is a thing.
Yeah. And it is. It's such a thing. And I think that's another, I'm going to be doing a holistic health summit for Bitcoiners in April, just kind of a semi-virtual in-person summit here at the Denver space. But it's like, if we're not watching out for our consumption model, and like what's kind of coming in, like we're going to unfortunately get polluted, right? Whether it's social media, whether it's the stuff we're putting in our mouths, whether it's vaccines, probably the second I said that word, we're going to get shut off of YouTube. But But I feel like, unfortunately, like, people are in that paradigm over there, right? So they're just kind of like trying to, how do I get like an extra $10 a week to go put into Bitcoin, you know? And then we've got a whole nother set of people over here who are Bitcoiners who are just like, oh, hodl, hodl, hodl. I'm not supposed to go spend my Bitcoin. I'm like, fuck yeah, you are. I'm like, how are we going to make this a medium of exchange if you don't? And here's
Right.
one possible way. And this is, I'm sure there's tons of ways, but like, if you're, wanting to hold all of your, your resources in Bitcoin, um, then, oh, look, it's Thursday. I know I need to go buy a pizza. I got to get some groceries. I've got to do blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Convert your sats that day into fiat if you need to go do fiat, or, go buy Bitcoin if you're in a community that's a circular economy,
Right.
and then you can say, cool,
Yeah,
this is
the
my
circular
cold
economies
storage
definitely
and
help.
this is my spending, little bucket over here, just like you would with your wallet in your purse or your pants. And so people need to start thinking like every choice that they make, every time that they spend a sat, a penny, a dollar, a yen, or whatever, you're either voting for peace and freedom or you're voting for the fiat slavery
Yeah.
system.
And an interesting thing happened with the game once we started playtesting it. This thing manifested that mirrors what happens in the real world, in
Uh-huh.
that people spend the shittier money first.
Yeah.
So in the game, we've got two currencies. We have Bitcoin, we have generically fiat. And in order to convert back and forth between the two, you need a service in the game. There's service cards like Mount Gox. You can see that, or if it'll focus, but
I know, let it focus. Yeah.
it's an exchange and it lets you convert your fiat Bitcoin back and forth. But when you're playing a card out of your hand, frequently you can pay for it in either currency, and people always spend the fiat first.
Of
They
course.
spend up all their fiat because it's potentially, there's an exchange rate in the game. It's potentially getting, devalued over the course of the game. And so they spend it early, they spend it often. And then when all they have left is Bitcoin, then they have to spend their Bitcoin in order to do things. And this manifested in the game, and I was delightfully surprised about how quickly people started figuring out, oh yeah, you spend the crap first. You hodl the Bitcoin, you spend the fiat, and then when you run out of fiat, you have to spend the Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's to me, it's like I I try to make everything as simple as possible for my little brain, and I look at like when my children have gone like trick or treating with Halloween candy, right? Like when they go start to try to do their trades, they're not trading the best stuff first. They're just like, oh, here you can have my little junky pencil or whatever the fuck
Yeah,
these people gave me, and okay, I'll trade you for this thing. And so they're constantly, and I know that there's a term for this, and God, I forget. Oswaldo, if you're listening, you're so smart. You always teach me stuff. But he's one of my mentors, and but there's a phrase for why the thing when you teach, you're not teach when you spend the crap value money first, and so, um, and I think that's something for. It's going to take time, of course, until we get to this medium of exchange, and obviously, it's going to take time because we're navigating capital gains
mhm.
and people are just like, "Oh no, I'm going to zap you or buy a Starbucks or whatever. I don't want to pay." Who
And now
cares,
I have to do a tax report. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's horrible.
And so it's just sort of a thing, but like, okay, whatever. It's a couple steps. Like, how many steps for freedom did the people who, in our country and obviously many countries have to go take so that we could have something that separates ourselves from a malicious government that doesn't care about us, so if
Yeah.
that means we have to have a couple more steps of reporting, who cares, I don't know, I just feel like we're so used to everything being
Yeah.
so easy all the time.
I'll take a little bit of paperwork over the risk of confiscation any day.
Yeah, and in the risk of tyranny and authoritarianism, and that's what we're obviously seeing, and so people don't get that, and it's like we're these frogs in boiling water, and that whole analogy there, and it's just like,
Yeah, unfortunately, the reporting is surveillance. So, maybe they can't confiscate your Bitcoin, but they may know how much you have based on your tax reporting and things like that. But yeah, it's just a giant scam. The entire fiat system. It's horrible.
It is, and so, like, and I'm not gonna dox where you're at, but, like, so judging from what you're seeing, what's going on with Trump and all the stuff with the auditing and Doge and everything, like, what are your thoughts on that, and how do you think that's gonna, impact, the future of Bitcoin?
Yeah. It's obviously beneficial that we now have an administration that's more favorable to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The last one was very, very anti-crypto, anti-Bitcoin. So that's an obvious big step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Now, whether any of the individual actions that are being taken are going to be, huge helps or little help, we're not really sure yet. Got to kind of wait and see what actually happens and how it plays out. A national Bitcoin reserve could go either way. That could help Bitcoin. That could potentially harm Bitcoin. So we kind of need to see, what the market economics are going to look like when these things are implemented, and what happens to the demand for block space? What happens to the number of transactions that are happening on the base chain versus upper layers like Lightning and Liquid? There's so many different variables and factors there. It's hard to tell what is going to happen until we're in the middle of it, and you can kind of start to see the direction things are going. And I think right now, we're only a few weeks into this administration. It may be a bit too early to try to predict anything, honestly.
But do you think, like, so, okay, and I'm not obviously like a big finance woman, but I was listening to a space, I don't know if it was last night or the night before, it might have been last night, with Magoo and David Bailey. And they were talking about, Magoo was kind of pushing against David's, strategic Bitcoin reserve concept, and Cynthia Lummis's bill. And they're just like, number one, where's the money going to come from? Number two, if you think you're going to get up to 1 million Bitcoin in this, strategic Bitcoin reserve, like, what's going to happen to the market, with that? And is it actually going to, like, what's the timeline of that actually playing out? And how is it going to continue to, because as the price goes up, when people are like, oh my gosh, the U.S. government's doing this reserve, like, it's going to make it more expensive for the U.S. government to get it. So are they going to print more money and then fuck the rest of the people who are holding dollars,
Yeah. Where's the money going to come from? They're going to print it.
Yeah.
The first nation that can print money, to print fiat money to buy Bitcoin, wins.
Totally.
None of them have done it yet. El Salvador can't do it because they're a dollarized economy. They can't print dollars.
Yeah.
They only have the dollars they have to work with. They're buying Bitcoin with it, which is the right move. But they can't print their own dollars and buy Bitcoin. The United States can. Yeah. Other countries that have their own sovereign fiat currency can. None of them have done it yet. The first one that does it and completely destroys their own currency to get as much Bitcoin as possible, they're going to win.
Yeah, and it's such you just brought up El Salvador, so I don't want to go too much of a tangent there, but I just interviewed John Dennehy the other day, but it's kind of like, okay, now El Salvador was, oh, cool, legal tender and playing all these games, and then now it's like, here's your IMF loan, you don't get to go do those things anymore. And so they rug pulled a lot of what we thought was going to be the trajectory for how Bitcoin was going to get, involved, for their community. And so that's sort of a buyer beware, I think, cautionary tale for people, because we get so excited, and that's for everybody. I don't care if you're for Trump or Kamala or, whatever, Scooby-Doo. It's like, there's always going to be a change of the guard of political folks, and you never know which way they're going to go. And I don't know that, like, what do you think about separate? Because obviously we're talking about this, Bitcoin strategic reserve. That's combining money with state again, which I think, to me, Bitcoin, the point is separating money from state.
The point is separating the control of money from state.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is for everyone and anyone, including your enemies. I think it's perfectly legitimate for a government to buy and use and hold Bitcoin, as long as they can't control it. Maintaining the decentralization is paramount. ensuring that they don't get too much political influence over the developers that are creating the reference implementation core. Things like that are very important. But a government using Bitcoin is just as legitimate as anyone else using Bitcoin. You, me, a business, anyone all over the world.
How do you? Okay, I'm going to go on a weird string right now, if it's okay with you.
Sure.
I was gosh, Sybil or Sybil, I forget his name, but there was a guy who's did this big 4-7, I don't know how many year documentary about the moon landing, and he's just like, the moon landing's fake, it's bullshit, and he went up and went to, I forget whichever astronaut, and was like, would you put your hand on the Bible and swear that you landed on the moon? And the guy punched him in the face, and so unfortunately we're looking at these entities, whether it's the CIA, whether it's the NSA, whether it's whatever the three letters are, that have their hands in the game of the people who can talk about things in the public. And so for me, with Bitcoin Core developers, because in my opinion, or my, tiny bit of research, it's all about blackmail. And there's a lot of blackmail involved with what we've got going on between, certain organizations around the world. I'm not going to say what they are, with their certain lists that nobody wants to have out there in the public. And so how can we as Bitcoiners feel confident as we do our own research to make sure that, like, the core developers or anybody is not compromised by the blackmail strings that we know, unfortunately, are like metastasized cancer all over the world?
Yeah, anytime you have secrecy around operations, things that especially in government, should be public, should be auditable, should be responsible to Congress or the executive branch or whoever oversees them. Anytime that is hidden from the public, other than very, very few legitimate national security concerns, is a giant red flag that there's something corrupt or something bad going on there. And I think identifying those areas and shining light on them, pushing for transparency, things like that are how we solve a lot of that discomfort. As we're finding out, just recently with Doge and the USAID stuff, people are outraged at where their tax money has been going through USAID, because USAID has resisted oversight from Congress for a very long time. Nobody knew what was going on there other than the people inside USAID. And so, things like that, initiatives like that bring these things to light, I think help with some of that discomfort around the lack of transparency in our organizations.
As a technologist, because, we heard Elon say recently, okay, let's put all the government transactions on a blockchain, and I was just in a space the other day, and there were some folks who didn't understand, who were claiming they knew what blockchain is and what a blockchain was meant to do. And they're just like, oh, it's just a marketing term. I'm like, no, dude, I'm not you, obviously I'm not a genius technologist, but it's like, what could be a tool, and is it Bitcoin? Is it the Bitcoin time chain blockchain to put all of the government transactions on? Because we've seen the guys in Guatemala who've done the voting, that goes on, and so to me that's really cool, right? So it's like, great, here's our voting, this is our transparent voting. So is there a way for us to is Bitcoin the right tool and mechanism for this, or is there something else? Because I think as a citizen, I would love to be able to just open up a browser and go, yep, here's what the fuck they spent some money on today. And
it kind of depends on what your goals are. If you need transparency, there's ways to do that without the overhead of a blockchain.
Yeah.
If you need immutability, sure, maybe you might want a blockchain, something that is cryptographically secure and can't be rewritten later to hide things, that kind of stuff. So it really kind of depends on what your goals are, because blockchains are very overhead heavy.
Yeah, they're
So
expensive. They're
they're
not
not
like they're
they're
not a
not
cheap
the
database with
silver bullet
AWS.
for many things.
Yeah,
So yeah, it kind of depends. If you're trying to make government transactions uh, publicly verifiable, transparent, first you got to define what a government transaction is. There's so many departments. There's
yeah,
so many different branches. They interface with NGOs, private business, all kinds of different things. Like I think getting a handle on just collecting the data is going to be a much bigger problem than making the data transparent or immutable, which may or may not need a blockchain. So yeah, I think there's some bigger problems to solve first in how to identify and collect all the information in a central place or something, or wherever you're going to make it transparent.
but is it something that you think, I mean, again, like, I know that there are certain things where it's like, "Okay, we've gotta be private and not let the whole world know what we're spending money on," but, like, that's unfortunately, instead of, like, 80/20 public private, it's been 80/20 private public, and so people don't know what the heck the money's being spent on. We're
Right.
having, whatever trans operas in Colombia and, whatever the heck they're doing to the beagles that Fauci's doing. I don't know, but it's just like we 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 need to understand, like, number one, what's the role of government,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what are the things that we actually should be spending our money on? And is this, like, to me, like a 1 out of 10, is this a good thing that we should be spending taxpayer dollars on? And then
I'm a fairly strict constitutionalist. So it's like for me, there's a lot of these things that are very obviously not authorized for the federal government to do by the Constitution, and should be left to the states or the people.
yeah,
And it's like, why is the federal government doing this at all?
no,
They shouldn't be. If you want
yeah,
this done, do it in your own state.
totally. And
Figure it out at a local level. It doesn't need to be a giant nationwide massive program that affects everyone, because not everyone in the United States is the same. We've got various regions that have vastly different economic properties. We've got different regions that have vastly different ethnic mixes.
totally.
The United States is a giant place, and not everything. In fact, most things probably should not be one size fits all.
No. Yeah, there should be no one size fits all. And it's like, what are the 3 basic functions of government, And so it's kinda like, how can we get down to the basics and let the federal government do the biggest things that we're supposed to do? Okay, let's protect our borders. Let's make some rules that make sure that people don't kill each other.
Mhm.
And so I just feel like it's gotten so bloated because people are incentivized to play the game, again, I'm not like a super political person. I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm in the middle. I'm just, I got sparkles. But I feel like as a business person, I'm like, if I look at it this way, and I was going to write an article about this, and I probably still will, but I think about, you know, if I'm joining a club, if I'm joining a membership organization, I'm going to pay some dues. Why am I paying dues? Because I'm going to get something back in exchange for paying the dues to be a part of the club.
Right.
What are my dues going to give me? Okay, cool. I got a coffee machine over here at the co-working space. I'm going to get to use the co-working space for a couple hours. I'm going to make sure nobody steals our computers at the co-working space, whatever.
Your tools, laser cutter,
Totally simple
CNC
stuff.
machine.
Yeah, like, here's a couple things, but
Yeah.
my dues that I'm paying to be a part of that club are not to go for somebody who's 2,000 miles away to go do something that doesn't benefit me and my little club. And so, I feel like people are losing the plot here, because they've got this open checkbook, and they've been playing with the open checkbook. And so, and I used to be so far left, and like, oh, everybody kumbaya and bring everybody together. And I don't even want to say left, but just, you know, I was just a lot more liberal than I am now. And since I became a Bitcoiner, I'm a lot more like, that's not fair. That's not the right way to use resources,
Yeah.
and I don't know. It's been a different, an unexpected experience for sure.
Yeah.
Because I'm like a total groovy hippie chick, and now I'm just like, don't do that. Okay, well, enough of me and all that stuff. So let's talk about the game, and let's talk
Okay.
about what the future is of the Bitcoin collectible card game, and let's talk about like how people can support you with Geyser.fund. Like, what
Sure.
is Geyser.fund?
So Geyser is a crowdfunding platform. We have been running the campaign there to take pre-orders essentially for the past few weeks. We were trying to get a Kickstarter and a GameFound crowdfunding campaign going as well to kind of target gamers specifically, and then Kickstarter is obviously the biggest one in the industry. GameFound just recently completely rejected us. Tried to figure out exactly why, and they were being real obscure about it. It essentially came down to they probably don't like Bitcoin, just in general. And Kickstarter, we've been in campaign approval limbo for nearly 3 weeks now. I'm not super confident that they're going to get off their asses and actually approve our campaign. So right now, it is only available to purchase with Bitcoin. We are working on getting all of the same stuff that's in the Geyser campaign up in our e-commerce shop early. We were going to wait until we actually had product in hand before we did that, but it seems like the only way we're going to be able to allow people to purchase or pre-order the stuff with their dirty fiat is by actually putting it in our own store. So we're working on that. If you do want to purchase with fiat, that'll be available soon. But right now, the Geyser Fund campaign is the way to go and pre-order. They accept Lightning and I believe on-chain as well. Yeah, we are about 80, you can see there, almost 85% of the way to our goal. The goal funds a single print run of the first set of cards, which is the core 2025 set. We're versioning these per year so that they are obviously a limited edition. Once we stop printing the core 2025 set, that's all of that set that will ever be printed. And so as a collectible, there's where your scarcity comes from. You can purchase individual booster packs or individual starter decks. They are randomized in the same way and have the same rarity distributions across them, so that if you buy a starter deck of 60 cards, or you buy 5 booster packs, which is also 60 cards, 12 cards per pack, you're going to get roughly the same rarity distribution. You're going to get the same number of rares, same number of uncommon cards, same number of commons out of the the number of cards you're purchasing. The only difference is a starter deck ensures that you get certain types of cards so that the deck should be playable just out of the box. It may not be a good deck because it's randomized. You may want to buy some booster packs and get some other cards and fine tune and tweak your starter deck. Maybe buy a starter deck plus 5 boosters, and then you've got a good starter collection of cards to build a single deck from. But it should be playable out of the box if you just buy a starter deck.
Awesome. I love it. And so everybody who's watching, you can obviously see what's up on the screen. It's geyser.fund/project/Bitcoin CCG. I'll put everything in the show notes so you guys can have these. And, if you want to participate, what would you say to people who are, just kind of on the fence, who are learning Bitcoin, who want to kind of get involved, but are a little uncertain? Like, what would you help people understand and give them a little sense of comfort around their journey?
Yeah. So you don't need to know anything about Bitcoin to play this game.
Cool.
It will teach you some concepts, like I mentioned earlier, the mempool, and kind of the conversion between fiat and Bitcoin and exchange rates and things like that. But you don't need to know anything about Bitcoin to play the game. You can pick up a deck of cards, play against someone else, and you'll start to kind of learn these concepts. The game itself is obviously the point of the cards, but they are collectibles as well. So if you're not a gamer, you don't care for the game at all, and you're just into the collecting of the cards, we have 5 different rarities of cards in the game. There's legendary, epic, rare, uncommon, and common. Out of the core 2025 set, there are only 2 legendary cards, Satoshi Nakamoto, which you actually just brought up on the screen there,
Okay.
and the 51% attack. So if you manage to pull either of those out of a pack, you might want to hang on to them because they're going to be pretty scarce.
Oh my God.
Yeah, if you scroll back to that card slider section.
Hey, now, hold on. I'm trying to get.
Top right.
Come on, computer, work.
You should be able to click on the cards at the top.
Cards.
Right, I think.
I know it's not. It's saying return home. Oh, here we go. Return home. Okay. Yeah.
Scroll down until you see the card examples that you were looking at just a second ago, and I'll kind of walk you through.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, here you go. So there are 7 different types of cards in the game.
Got it. Okay, great.
Starting with the brown ones, they're people or person cards. We have individual people in the game like Satoshi Nakamoto, and then we also have what are kind of archetypes of a person, like a cypherpunk, a software engineer, that kind of thing. That's more of a class of person. They do different things, like let you draw extra cards, or get some extra hash for the hash comparison at the end of the round to determine who gets to mine the block and things like that. The second one, the yellow cards, are energy. So in this game, the resource that you need to harness to activate things and cause things to happen is energy. There's a bunch of different sources. We've got solar, we've got green energy, we've got nuclear power plants. On the screen, there's the infamous college dorm. The most expensive, quote unquote, free energy ever. You're paying for it. But students used to, mine Bitcoin on their laptops in their college dorm way back in the day. So we included the college dorm. But these cards generate energy, and then you spend the energy to activate hardware, which is the next set, the gray ones. Here we've got things like ASIC miners that generate hash directly. We've got computers that will run software, and we'll get to software in a second. The software can do things like draw an extra card, or run a trading bot to generate fiat, or all kinds of different things that the software can do. There's other hardware that is not computer-esque. There's Faraday cages, there's battery packs to store energy, all kinds of different hardware. Let's see, the next one, the little bell and kind of the tan cards are services. These are things like crypto exchanges that let you convert your fiat and Bitcoin back and forth, or we've got computer repair shops that help you re-enable any of your computers that an opponent has managed to disable on your side of the board. The interesting thing about services is they are available to anyone in the game to use. And if you own the service, you get paid for other people using it. So it can be a way to generate money in the game, as well as you can use them yourself to obviously create the effect for your benefit as well. The next one are instant actions. These are cards that happen immediately when they play. There's all kinds of different things that they do. And these are the only cards that can be played out of turn. So you can use these to respond to something that someone else is doing during their turn.
Okay.
They can then use them to respond to yours. And if you're familiar with Magic the Gathering and their instant mechanic, it works very much the same way. You can continue responding until nobody else wants to respond. And then all of the instants happen in reverse order to resolve. It's a fun mechanic, and we included it in this game as well. And these cards do all kinds of things. The one on the screen, inflation, increases the Bitcoin exchange rate. So Bitcoin gets more expensive in fiat terms as the game goes on. There's also a card that will deflate the exchange rate, but it's a little bit more rare. uh, the last one, the green cards, these are the mempool action cards. They're similar to instant actions in that they can do all kinds of different things, but these are the ones that get played into a mempool and don't happen immediately. You have to wait until the end of the round, and then at the end of the round, whoever has the most hash power gets to mine a block. If there's a tie or no one has any hash power, you do this process randomly, but whoever mines the block gets to choose from all of the waiting mempool actions which ones are going to be included in the block. And that's based on the number of players. If you've got 2 players, 1 mempool action will be mined in each block. If you've got 4 players, then 3 mempool actions will be mined in a block. It's essentially 1 less than the number of players. And so whoever's mining the block gets to pick from all of the waiting ones. And so, they're likely to pick their own. But if they don't have any, they have to choose from the remaining ones and fill up the block. You can only mine an empty block if there's nothing waiting to be mined. So that's kind of a walkthrough of the different types of cards. There's 147 cards in the core 2025 set. We'll hopefully go to print here in the next couple of weeks, as I mentioned. And we're going to do an initial print run. We'll probably go on a bit of a roadshow to various conferences and game shows and Bitcoin events and things and try to sell that inventory out. If we do that relatively quickly and it's pretty popular, we may do a second print run of this set. But probably around the end of the third quarter, we'll stop printing this set. We'll start focusing on a set for 2026. Which will be similar to 2025. We'll probably drop a few cards. We'll add a few new cards. We'll change all of the artwork. We'll change all of the flavor text. So they're, functionally the same card, but a new version for collectors. And we may also start working on some expansion sets that we have ideas for that will not be an ongoing set like the core set. It'll be a single print run of, some, probably smaller number of cards. That are more thematic. So we've got a few ideas for maybe an Bitcoin art-based expansion set. One called the Fiat Casino, which adds, things like treasuries and bonds and stuff like that. And then, we've got a number of ideas for other expansions. So if the core 2025 set is successful, we'll continue making cards and different expansions and this ongoing core set that will be available each year.
I think this is so much fun. And I love, again, like how you're turning, education and fun into something that's, of course, you can touch too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think makes it really interesting. It's not just, okay, everything's digital and it's over there, like I think that makes it such another layer of opportunity for different people to learn and have fun and play with this. So, wow, dude, you've been working on this for 4 years. This is incredible.
Just short of 4 years. We're coming up on 4.
Oh my gosh. So, okay. So everybody can find you on X at Bitcoin CCG.
That is the game's profile. You can follow it there. We have a similar one on Nostr as well. Same name.
Okay, awesome. And then you guys, whoever's not on Nostr, go check out Nostr. There's so many things you need to learn if you care about, decentralized communication that is uncensorable and you can zap each other, which is also very cool.
Yeah, Lightning is integrated into Nostr, which is great.
It's so cool.
Adding money to social media has been a really interesting experiment.
It has. I think, that we had when I got to go to Austin, I think, it was in December, and listening to Ainsley Costello, who, her story about like, oh, I was on Spotify for 5 years and I made, $50 or something ridiculous, and she made like, $12,000 in 18 months, with just her fan zaps. And I think people don't understand like how important it is to have that 1,000 true fans, like Kevin Kelly talks about. And so, so definitely check out Nostr if you guys don't know Nostr. And there's really, there's so many things. Like I use Primal, and there's obviously Amethyst. There's all sorts of great.
There are hundreds of Nostr apps at this point because each one creates a slightly different experience for you. You've got ones that behave like Twitter. You've got ones that behave like Instagram. You've got long form blog post clients, and it's all the same communications protocol. It's all the same data. It's just the app is a different experience
Yeah.
with that wealth of data. It's an amazing protocol. I really think Nostr is social media's end game.
Yeah.
In end state, and it's if you're trying to decide, whether to go over to Blue Sky or whether to go over to Mastodon because you don't like that Meta just did this thing and Elon just did this thing, just skip all that bullshit and go straight to the end state and get on Nostr.
Yeah, and I think and one thing I would, tell people who are new, right? Because it's like people see like an NPub and an NSEC and there's like, "Oh gosh," or whatever it is. They get nervous because
It
there's so
is a
many
different
letters and things,
paradigm.
and they're just like, "What do you mean I can't just name it kitty cat?" And it's like, "Okay, it's no
Right.
big deal." Just like we had the @ symbol back in the day when we were learning about, email, it's so chill and um don't be afraid. But what's neat, I think a lot of people don't get, like, because obviously if you go sign up for, you know, uh, a YouTube or a Twitter or a LinkedIn or an Instagram, like you have all these separate logins, you have all your separate social followers and your social graph,
Yeah.
like that.
And you can be deplatformed and lose all of it.
Exactly. And you own nothing. And
Yeah.
so with Nostr, it's like you have one identity, and then you have all of the people that you follow and that follow you, and you can
Or
take
maybe you
them.
have multiple identities. I mean,
Well,
just give it.
if you have somebody who likes to have green hair and go do fun things out there in the world, like we never talked about the color green, Dustin. Let's
Oh
talk
yeah,
about.
that's what you started with, and we
I
never.
know we never got there.
Yeah,
Talk to me about
it's
green,
way
my brother.
simpler than what most people would expect. I just really like the color. And mid high school or so, I was upgrading my wardrobe, and I realized like half my wardrobe is already green. Let's just go all in. And so
Do it.
I bought all green clothes, and I've been wearing nothing but green ever since. That's been 30 something years. So
It's great. I mean, and I'm gonna pull you up here. Hold on. I want to pull up your website. The
yeah,
Dustin.
website screen,
Hold on.
car
Wait. Let's make sure
screen.
it goes up here.
Basically, if I have a choice and green is an option, it's probably going to be green.
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I know. I'm so grateful to know you, and like I know we have our like little cyber little likes and shares and stuff, and obviously we've gotten to meet each other in person a few times. I
Yeah,
thought that was really special. And yeah, it's just like what a cool community we've got, that we can, meet each other and talk about life. And I don't
yeah.
know. I'm stoked. Any last words for people, like, to learn about you, follow you, obviously go to.
Not really. Most of my things can be found off the website you're showing right now, dustintrammell.com. I've got my social media links up there. Regarding the game, go check out Geyser. If you're comfortable spending some Bitcoin, you can pre-order through there. If you want to wait until it's available for fiat, that should be in the next week or so. We'll have it up on the Rogue Signal e-commerce shop. Rogue Signal is my gaming company that is the publisher of this game, among others. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Well, Dustin, I appreciate spending our Saturday evening together.
Absolutely.
And I hope the folks that are listening got something out of this, and whoever's going to listen to the recording gets something out of it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing your game out there in the world. Do you have any, are you doing any conferences? Should we look for you anywhere in the world?
I've just started planning out my 2025. I'm not real sure yet which of the events I'm going to hit, and which ones we'll have the game at depends on how quickly we get everything back from the printer. If we're able to meet our near-term deadline and go to print here in the next couple of weeks, or if something comes up and delays that. Ideally, we'll have everything back from the printer mid to late March and can fulfill the pre-orders then. And then whatever inventory is left, we'll take on a roadshow, and we'll go to some of the Bitcoin conferences, some of the gaming and card collector conferences and things like that. So you'll definitely see us around if you're in any of those spaces and attend any of those types of events.
Awesome. Cool. Well, hopefully I'll get to see you somewhere on planet Earth this year.
Yeah,
And I
for
know
sure.
Yeah, I look forward to it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in, and make sure you guys go follow Dustin. You guys can go to dustintrammell.com and all of the other links that I'm going to put up here in the show notes for you. And I hope you guys have the best Saturday that you've ever had in your whole life, because you know what? It's the only one you're ever going to get. It's today. So peace, love, and warm aloha. And thank you, Dustin, for